The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Hello, welcome to Staring Into the Abyss. I'm your host, Scott Kemper. With me, as always, is Marco Patrick Hicks.
Hello.
And the ever-lovable Matt Brandenburg.
Hey, hey, hey.
And we have a very special guest with Daniel Barnett.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us. This episode, what we're going to be doing is giving our first video game episode. Because yes. Mike and myself and Dan are all gamers. And Matt likes to watch YouTube.
I play some games, but yeah, I'm so far behind on everything. I mean, like, we just got a Switch, and I think I've played it like twice. So
yeah, I remember you had gone for your birthday to go play GoldenEye at one of the arcade shops by you.
Nice throwback.
Oh yeah, it was a crazy time.
Well, we're going to be discussing The Last of Us Part 2 with full spoilers. So if you haven't played the game, make sure you play it. But by the time this episode comes out, I'm sure most people would have played it by then. Before we'll dive into Last of Us, we'd like to give a rundown of recommendations from our last week. So I'm going to begin. I watched a movie called Relic. This is not the cinematic monster masterpiece starring Tom Sizemore.
Yes. Sizemore. It's Sizemore. Tom Sizemore in a museum with a monster. It's a fucking great movie. I'm glad you finally got to watch it.
I saw that one a while ago. This one's called Relic.
Didn't that one come out like run? I always get that one confused with Mimic. Didn't Mimic come out around the same time?
Around the same time.
The bug movie.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, this one is actually a brand new release, which is an Australian.
It's a sequel. It's a sequel. It has instead of the Relic, the sequel is just Relic. They dropped "the" from the title, and like Fast and Furious.
Right.
No.
Yeah. Is this a prequel?
No, it has nothing to do with this monster movie.
This is bullshit.
At all.
Yeah. I'm done.
I just watched that last night, by the way.
I watched it the monster one or the new one?
The new one.
Okay, I watched it last night too.
Oh, wow. We buddy watched it and didn't even know it.
I really, really love this movie. It's pretty much, there's this family with an older mother, and one day the mother goes missing, and the daughter and granddaughter of this woman go to her house to like check in and see what's happening and file a missing persons report. Then a couple days later, she appears with no memory of where she's been or what's happened. And it's kind of like a slow burn haunted house possession movie where it's like a metaphor about dementia and Alzheimer's. And the movie, like halfway through, I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing, movie. And then by the end, it really got me. And I found it to be like a very touching and emotionally moving movie. I don't want to spoil too much about it, but if you enjoy A24 art house horror films, you'll probably enjoy this one.
Was it A24 or was it?
It was an A24, but it could have been an A24 movie.
Yeah, I feel that for sure.
It felt like one. And Jake Gyllenhaal produced it.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
I just heard about this movie. Actually, I got the newest issue of Fangoria, which, on a side, and I didn't even realize, I thought they were kind of done for a little bit because of everything going on with Cinestate, but apparently they still put this one out. And it sounds awesome, just from what I read in the magazine.
It's really, really good. I read it. I read the issue of Fangoria, and it made me want to see the movie. So I rented it and strongly recommend it. I don't have too many funny things to say about this movie because the movie's pretty serious and deals with dementia and all that stuff. But it is a really, really good art house horror movie. If you have an itch to watch something art housey, I strongly recommend it.
Nice.
Yeah, $6 on Prime.
Oh, that's not bad.
It's better than the $20 rentals that Universal's doing on Prime.
Yeah.
Which, like, there's maybe a couple movies I would do that for, but it's like few and far between.
And if you wait like 2 months, they're going to be $5 anyway.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Mike, what about you? Any recommendations?
Well, our little Twitterverse, our Tweeples E, Book Monster, and Tracy, they are constantly going on about David fucking Joy.
David Joy is awesome.
No.
I finally read my first book from David Joy, When These Monsters Burn. And, you guys are right. He is pretty fucking awesome. It was a really good book. It's a nice little Appalachian noir crime story about drugs, loss, and revenge in the mountains of North Carolina. Ray is a retired Forest Service. His son is a drug addict. And the boy ends up owing a ton of money to a slimy drug dealer who lives on one of the Native American reservations in North Carolina. Ray has come into a bit of money thanks to a land deal. His son had previously broke into his house to try and steal the money, but couldn't find it. And when the boy gets abducted, they call Ray, threatening to either kill him or you can pay us the $10,000 that he owes us. And Ray ends up paying him the money and promises the drug dealer that if he ever sells anything to his son again, he's going to burn his world down. This does not end well for the drug dealer and Ray's boy. So
I have a question, Mike.
Sure.
Do the mountains burn?
Yes. At the backdrop of all of this is a wildfire that's raging across the mountains of North Carolina, burning thousands and thousands of acres and covering this little mountain community in a haze of smoke.
Crazy.
That sounds excellent.
It was
reading for a long time.
Yeah, I have too. He came across my radar last year with, I believe it was The Line That Held Us, was the last book I saw everyone raving about.
That's a really good book.
Yeah, I picked it up. I haven't read it yet, but after reading When These Mountains Burn, I definitely need to. It's a nice change of pace. Like I've been on a little bit of a crime kick these past few weeks between Blacktop Wasteland and When These Mountains Burn. I am currently reading the very first Doc Ford novel that Randy Wayne White put out back in 1990. I'm just now getting to that one. But David Joy, it's a nice change of pace with the rural noir. You're up in the mountains dealing with these drug dealers and incompetent local police, and it's a really neat setting that's a very welcome change of pace from places like LA or New York. And you really get a real sense of how the drug trade has impacted these small communities and these small town folk who haven't relied on people outside of their communities now kind of needing things like police and trying to figure out how to do justice, take things into their own hands or wait for the law to help. It was a really, really good read. So definite recommendation there. I'm a new fan of David Joy.
That sounds
awesome.
Pretty cool.
And Matt, what about you?
Yes. Okay. So I'm trying to decide because a lot has happened this last week. I am reading, or I'm about a quarter of a way through Looming Low, which I believe a couple episodes back we discussed Nadia Bulkin's story in that collection.
Yes, lived through this.
Yes, and so after that, I finally decided, I was like, I need to check out the rest of this, and it's awesome. Dim Shores put it out, I think 2017, and it is all weird stories, weird fiction. So far, at least 2 of them have either shown up in one of the best of horrors and or collections I've read, so it's kind of neat to see kind of where those stories have come from. It's got a ton of authors in it, big name, Brian Evanson, Betty Rocksteady's in it, Olivia Llewellyn, obviously Nadia Bulkin, and it's a great collection. I needed something a little weird considering I'm reading a Star Wars book as well, so I needed something to kind of feed into my weird horror itch. So I'm enjoying it a lot. And, I kind of remember it coming out, and then I don't remember hearing much about it. And, I think it needs to be brought back up. I think Dim Shores has got a couple other things coming out soon. I think they have a Presents anthology coming out, which is going to have a bunch of authors in it as well, obviously, because it's an anthology. But anyway, Looming Low, check it out. It's super good.
Question.
Yes.
There's a Kurt Flaver story in there, right?
Maybe. I don't have it in front of me, so I cannot confirm nor deny.
Because if it's the one I think it is, that story is fucking incredible.
Well,
that anthology is great.
Yeah, no, it's so far it's been awesome. Everything has been right where it needs to be.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And Dan, any recommendations from you for the last week besides the art house movie Relic and not the monster movie The Relic?
Well, that was gonna be my choice actually when we started in this. Relic is, I have one of my books kind of deals with the same subject, so I felt a little bit of like, that Leonardo meme when he's sitting forward and pointing at the TV.
Yes.
A little bit like that during that movie, which was kind of fun. Beyond that, nothing new ground, or no new ground was really tread this week. I've been doing a reread of Doom McKee.
Ooh, that's a really good book.
It's excellent, and it's a door stopper, so kind of consumed me on that. That's probably read about 400 pages or so. Always amazed at just how well Stephen King knows what story he's trying to tell. He just understands the story he's telling, and I feel like that's kind of an underrated thing to some extent. He just gets to the bottom of it always, every corner, and that's pretty remarkable. Beyond that, it's been a week of rehashing. I rewatched The Lord of the Rings.
Nice.
Nice. Finally have my definitive ranking for the 3 movies.
What is your ranking?
Fellowship, then Return, then The Two Towers.
Oh.
Yeah, it took years to kind of cement that in place.
Yeah.
Did you watch the extended cuts or the theatrical cuts?
So I predominantly the actual cuts, and a little bit of a qualifier here. I always stop the Return of the King on the my friends You Bow to No One scene.
Yeah.
When it pans out there, I'm like, oh, the movie's done. Wonderful. That's great.
Yeah, it had 10 endings almost.
Yeah, I'm happy the other stuff exists, but I don't need to watch it again. It's epilogue material.
Right.
But yeah, so
I feel like
a little bit of that.
He never because I've read those books multiple times, and it felt like Tolkien, he didn't know when to end it. So they battle, they win, they destroyed a ring, and then he goes, and then he still has to fight Sharky with Saruman, and I'm like, just end the book. You don't need to throw in this extra little battle that. It's nice to hear Wormtongue stab the guy, but
yeah, that's a really. I feel like there's a lot of room for discussion there. I don't know how many of you followed. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Yes.
George R. R. Martin actually talked about, he framed his final climax in King's Landing based off of what Tolkien did with the Shire.
Oh.
And because the subtext seemed to be there that just because you beat the great evil in the world doesn't mean assholes don't exist.
Yeah.
So life goes on, and there's still the pettier, smaller day-to-day evil, and I think that was kind of what Tolkien was going for there, to say it's not happily ever after. There's still the world is still a work in progress, and for that reason I kind of appreciate it. I think that was nuanced.
Yeah.
I can kind of see that too, because some of Lord of the Rings was definitely based on Tolkien's personal life and World War I and the state of Europe. So I definitely see some of that.
The way you left it. Yeah, you return home and it isn't the way you left it. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I have a couple more things real quick. I don't know if I talked about this movie before, but I'm going to give it a quick mention. I decided to rewatch The Beach House because Shudder finally got it.
Yes.
Everybody's been talking about that one.
Yeah.
So I watched it back during the Chattanooga Film Festival when they went online, and I bought like a one-day pass, and I just spent the entire day watching movies. Like I watched The Beach House, then I watched Jumbo, which is a French romance movie about a girl who falls in love with a theme park ride. And I watched a few others, but The Beach House and Jumbo. Oh, I watched the Fulci documentary as well, which was really good. Jumbo and The Beach House were the two standouts for me from what I saw. And I watched The Beach House again, and it still holds up on the second viewing. I had one person message me on Twitter the other day because I made a tweet about The Beach House, and he was like, I saw The Beach House based on your tweet, and I hated it. And I was like, thank you for telling me.
Just wanted you to know.
No, The Beach House, if you like The Color Out of Space and like weird fiction and practices in nihilism, The Beach House is definitely a movie for you.
I'll have to check it out tonight maybe then.
There's a scene that made me cringe, and I have a pretty strong stomach when it comes to movies. So I'll just give you a hint. It involves something not human, a human foot, and tongs.
Oh, no.
You mentioned The Color Out of Space. How does it... I assume you've seen that movie as well?
Yes.
How does it compare to the big shocker of that movie, The Fusion?
Well, there is no fusion. This movie has a much smaller budget than The Color Out of Space. It's less campy and more moody.
Okay.
So, like, the concept of The Beach House is... It's easy to spoil, so I don't want to say too much because it's best going in knowing very little. But a couple goes to the boyfriend's beach house, which his father owns. They go to the beach house, they fuck, because why not? And they find out there's another couple at this beach house, who's an older couple, who are friends with the boyfriend's father. And they decide to hang out at the night. 3 of them eat oysters, like the raw oysters, and they have edibles, and it's a good time. And so then some weird stuff starts happening, where this fog and spores are blowing in from the sea, and the trees are glowing blue. And the next day, just weird shit starts happening.
Sounds like a normal Friday night, you know?
Yeah. just use an edible hangover, no big deal. You eat the whole brownie instead of a piece. It happens. But no, the movie is, if you like weird fiction and like nihilistic stories, the movie's essentially watching a small story of the end of the world. It is beautiful and somber and very human, but it is not a happy movie at all. It is not the romantic comedy The Beach House, which also came out in 2019.
Although I'm sure they make great companion viewing.
Right.
I'm sure they do. I haven't seen the romantic comedy. Maybe I'll check that one out sometime. And then besides that, I have discontinued reading Broken by Don Winslow, which is in his novella collection.
How's that one shaping up?
His story, The San Diego Zoo, has the best opening I've ever read. Here's the opening sentence. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
No one knows how the chimp got the revolver.
Nice.
That's amazing.
I remember that opening line passing around. What's one of my favorite opening lines is Gillian Flynn. It was that small little collection, or that small little story she put out, like a novella, or not even quite a novella, maybe a novelette.
The one about the prostitute?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, she was kind of like a con lady of sorts. But that one started with that line, like, I didn't stop giving hand jobs because I was bad at it. I stopped because I was the best.
But continuing off of what Mike had said with his crime kick, Don Winslow, even Gillian Flynn, they're both fantastic crime writers. And crime makes a really good companion to horror stories as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you guys have anything else you'd like to recommend from this last week? Because that's all I got.
Well, I got to reiterate that Winslow is a genius.
Yes.
Probably my favorite I read the Cartel trilogy, or the Power of the Dog trilogy, I guess it's called, last year, and it was like 1,000 pages of perfection. I mean, it was just crazy.
Yeah, it was a fantastic series.
I'll never well, I mean, each book has like an unforgettable scene, but I'll never forget the first time I read that bridge scene in the first book.
Oh, God.
It's like more horrific than almost anything I read in a horror novel. And it's just so fucking cold.
I think I did that. I did the thing that I do, which none of you know about, but I have family that I will call up when I read a scene like that hits me that hard, and then I'll make them listen to it out of context. So, like, sorry to all my family out there that I've done that too, but
That's amazing.
No,
Yeah.
that the whole trilogy is perfection.
yeah.
I do love the 1-star reviews on the Cartel, because the whole like Donald Trump stuff in the Cartel, and people were like 1-star reviewing on Amazon, being like, Don Winslow hates America.
The way he used Donald Trump under like a sort of pseudonym for Donald Trump in the last book, I thought he did that like incredibly well. Like,
I think he did too.
you know, it's so easy to like kind of let like the figure of Donald Trump sort of like become the overshadowing, consumes everything else around it. But he still was telling the story he wanted to tell, while also just kind of throwing out those references.
Well, it's also impossible to tell the story about the war on drugs and not make it political,
Yeah, absolutely.
because so much of like modern politics is tied into that shit.
Yeah, I always thought that was pretty hilarious, those reviews. It's like, why does this have to be so political? Why does this book about America's involvement in Mexico and South America and how the CIA bought drugs to sell to Los Angeles communities and New York have to be so political? It's like, I don't understand you at all.
Even though Don Winslow is not horror, I will say he's written some scenes that are some of the most horrific things I've ever read in those books.
Yeah, I had
Like-
done a review of one of Vince Flynn's, or whoever Kyle Mills took after the character took over that series after Vince Flynn passed away. And someone didn't like my review, and they said my review was too political. And my response was, this book is a political thriller. If you can't handle the review, I don't think you're going to be able to tackle this book.
Well, still keeping in the context of politics, we're going to move into the controversy that is the masterpiece of a game, The Last of Us Part 2. And
You
the
just
reason
angered
why
a lot of trolls that are hate listening to this right now, waiting for this conversation.
I'm hoping by the time
Masterpiece, how dare you?
I'm hoping by the time this episode comes out, the trolls have died down.
Well, they may have died down with The Last of Us. They'll be busy attacking the new Batwoman, who is a black bisexual actress.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, this maybe they'll understand that this isn't a safe space for them, and they'll not listen.
Now they're going to be pouring onto our Twitter feed.
Games are my safe space.
Yeah.
Fuck.
It's kind of remarkable how like video games for so long have been like catering to a very selective viewpoint, which is like
White guys.
exactly, and like just this reaction to a game that all it does is actually give meaningful characterization to a couple of women instead of like the traditional white male hero, and you'd think their world was shattered. I mean, it's just
I will say, to put things in context for our audience, because I'm not too sure how much of our audience are gamers. The Last of Us came out in 2013, the first game, and it is still a masterpiece of a game. The sequel is also a masterpiece. And the first game was universally loved by critics and white boy gamers and non-white boy gamers. Like, I know plenty of people who just say The Last of Us is an incredible game. During the build-up for The Last of Us Part 2, people were theorizing about things and nervous about what might happen. And in April, the plot got leaked. And these white boy gamers got very angry.
I hear that at least one of them accidentally punched a hole in their mom's basement wall. And
His name was Chad.
yeah, and they had to take that out of his allowance to redo the drywall.
Sad day for drywall all across America.
It was a sad, sad day.
So to put things in context before we dive into the actual game, the opening of The Last of Us Part 2 deals with the main character from the first game, Joel. And Joel is not a hero or a good person. It is the apocalypse, and everyone's just trying to survive. And due to actions at the end of the first game, where Joel kills a bunch of people trying to find a cure for this virus, or this I shouldn't say virus, I should say fungus that's infecting humanity, people hunt him down and kill him. And that made gamers very angry when that scene got leaked. And to add to the anger, the character who kills Joel, you have to play as that character for half the game. Which
and what really what really infuriated them was that you had to play as a muscular woman.
Yes, who her sidekick is a trans man.
No, yeah, it's a game universe where people wrap dirty rags around their forearms to heal from gunshot wounds, but you'll find essays all across all across the internet on how impossible it is for a woman to be that muscular in a post-apocalyptic world with rations.
Even though she lives in a sports stadium that has a workout center, and
and she's
you constantly have to find pills to upgrade yourself with.
And she's part of a paramilitary organization.
Yeah,
but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah,
but if you were playing as Arnold Schwarzenegger through this game, it would have been the best thing ever. This is so realistic.
But I will say, before we dive fully into the game, one thing to kind of put the context of the anger, because I believe, and I take the standpoint, that if the plot was never leaked and the game came out and people experienced the game the way it was meant to be experienced, it would have been universally loved as the first game was. But the leaks shaded people, because one of the leaks that was given, which we'll kind of talk about more when we talk about the plot, is in level where you have to play as Abby, the lady who kills Joel, and hunt down Ellie, who is the character from the first game. And people thought Abby kills Ellie, and then you play the rest of the game as Abby.
Yeah, there was a lot of misinformation in the leaks that went out about this game, and everyone got their knickers in a twist without playing the game, without knowing whether or not these rumors were fact. And
now it's just a hate train.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now they can't back down because they've entrenched themselves so deeply in being shitheads that they just have to double down even further.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how much each of you respectively knew about the game before going in, but I kind of went into the bomb shelter to avoid hearing as much as I possibly just went in.
I knew Joel died because someone DM'd me the video.
Yeah. I thought it was going to be around the halfway point, but I kind of even stopped watching trailers and stuff. And I just got to remark on the narrative structure of this game that, for instance, you don't know why Abby kills Joel until halfway through the game, until that turning point when they make the point of view transition. And so, I mean, honestly, it's just such an ambitious narrative structure and so natural too, in terms of the setting. The characters who are killing Joel, they know why they're killing him, but they don't monologue about why they're doing it for the person who's participating in this. And it allows you to kind of preserve, form this hatred for them right from the beginning. And then the game says, no, we're going to erode that.
We're going to make you sympathize with this person to see their story.
Exactly.
Yeah. And they do it beautifully.
They do.
I really ended up seeing both sides of that story. I mean, you come into the game playing as Ellie, who, from the first game, and murdering Joel. You're immediately on Ellie's side. You want to get this son of a bitch and make them pay for what they've done for damaging these characters you spent so many hours with in the first game. and then to come in to play as Abby and get her background and her backstory and realize what was motivating her revenge. Yeah, I felt utterly sympathetic for her. You know, I could definitely see why she wanted Joel dead. And I also understood explicitly why Ellie wanted Joel dead, or wanted Abby dead. Although she didn't end up caring too much for Joel either. But
yeah. Well, I think to get our listeners up to speed, we should go over the first game and then dive into the second game. I can do the first game really quickly. The first game is pretty much there's a fungus. It's actually a real life fungus called cordyceps, which mostly infects like ants and insects, and it turns them kind of into like hive mind zombies essentially to like spread this fungus around. In the game The Last of Us, cordyceps has evolved to affect humans, and it turns humans into a bunch of flesh-craving fungus monsters.
Nice.
And the first game deals with a character named Joel, who we see in the opening with his daughter when Outbreak Day happens, and his daughter gets killed. We fast forward 20 years into the future, where Joel's this kind of cold, hard survivor type guy. And he's tasked with transporting a girl named Ellie. And Ellie's like a spunky 14-year-old girl. And Joel just wants nothing to do with it. And he finds out early on that Abby is immune to the cordyceps. And that's why they're transporting her to have her see a doctor who can potentially find a cure. Fast forward through most of the plot in the first game. By the end, Joel's developed a father-daughter connection with Ellie and views Ellie as kind of his new daughter, essentially. And when they get to the hospital, he finds out that the cordyceps virus is in her brain. And in order to find a cure, they have to kill her and remove her brain in order to develop the vaccine. And Joel can't lose a daughter again. So Joel goes mad and kills everybody in the hospital and saves Ellie. And the game ends with Joel telling Ellie that there are many immune people and there was no cure, pretty much lying to her. And the game ends with him telling her that lie. Did I miss anything, or did this?
Oh no! I just because it is. I mean, like I still hold it like as one of the absolute best stories told in the medium, and one of my favorites ever. I think like it's essentially built around this. I mean,
it's a dad game.
Yeah, it's built around this really like simple paradox where Joel regains enough of his humanity over the course of this journey that he is no longer able to sacrifice this young girl for humanity.
Yeah.
And I mean that's my reading of it personally. You know, obviously there's a degree of like selfishness there, but it's so simple, and both games when you break them down are about essentially taking a long, arduous, exhausting, crippling even journey for something that you ultimately reject in the end in favor of something else. I can't say enough good about either of them, but in any case.
So now that that's out of the way, we can do a deep dive into the second game, which this game made me cry at least 4 times. Dan, you were my emotional rock on Twitter during this game.
I ugly cried. Like
I did too.
Like there's that scene late in the game at the farmhouse, and I was so twisted up because I was worried the game was going to end without real resolution, because it could have and still would have been a functionally really sound ending in a lot of ways if it had ended at the farmhouse prior to Santa Barbara. So that was like an emotionally rocky time for me, because I thought the game was about to cut to credits like every single second of that like full sequence.
Yeah.
And then when she sits down with the guitar and we get the flash dance back, or the dance flashback sequence, man, I was like sitting here and just sobbing. That whole scene.
So Last of Us Part 2, just to introduce it, it takes place 5 years after the first game, and Ellie and Joel are living in Jackson, Wyoming, which is a town that Joel's brothers put together, and Abby's running patrols, and the game opens with the morning after that dance scene that Dan just brought up. We don't see the scene till later on, but it opens up in the beginning, and we already know things are weird because a girl named Dina kissed during the dance, and one of the townsmen was like not cool with it. And there was a funny joke in the beginning about the bigot sandwich. It makes me laugh still. And Ellie meets with her friend Jessie, and they go on a patrol. Well, they're going to meet Dina to go on their patrols to scout infected. Then the game switches, and we get introduced with new characters. And these new characters are led by a girl named Abby, and all we know is they're looking for somebody. And the whole beginning is switching back and forth. We have a really funny scene where Ellie and Dina find Eugene's pot basement. And
Eugene's porn stash.
Yeah, smash Brandy's cooch. That made me laugh.
There's probably not time to like get into specifics, but their dialogue leading up to their kiss down there is like what storytelling is made of.
Yes, the dialogue and the acting and everything is like perfection.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good.
And the graphics. I mean, Naughty Dog is an absolute master at creating graphical landscapes. Riding through the mountains of Wyoming, it's just gorgeous. I wanted to just stop and look at the mountains and see how the snow is impacted by jumping around in it. It was just, it's stunning.
The sun and the grass. Like,
yeah.
Yep. If you notice, the ice in the water breaks realistically when the horse goes over it.
And it like breaks differently depending on whether you're like right in the ice or whether you're like on the ice that's on the shore.
Yep.
I also noticed, speaking of similar aesthetic touches or realistic touches, in Santa Barbara at the end, if you walk down the shoreline where the water's coming up over the sand, you leave footprints in the sand, and the waves will actually gradually wash the footprints away.
Yeah, there's lots of like meaningless detail they put into this game to make it more realistic.
Yeah, they go right down to the pixel.
Which like they didn't have to do, but the fact they did it just makes it that much more special.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But I agree. The dialogue between Ellie and Dina leading up to their kiss in the basement is storytelling perfection and really good characterization.
I wanted to reach into the screen and hug both of them.
So then, after Ellie and Dina kiss, and it's kind of hinted that they had sex too.
Poor Jessie.
Jessie, who's Dina's ex-boyfriend, finds them. And it turns out Joel and Tommy never replaced their patrol. And during this blizzard, Abby meets a horde of infected and ends up meeting Joel and Tommy, who also the horde attacks. Abby then brings Joel and Tommy back to where her group is staying. And in this time, Abby finds out that this is the Joel she's been looking for. So when she brings Joel and Tommy back to their hideout, they introduce themselves. The group then attacks Tommy, knocks him out. Abby blows Joel's kneecap out with a shotgun, and then slow tortures him to death with the golf club.
God, that whole sequence was just so fucking brutal. I wanted to look away and like, can I skip this cutscene? Because
and also the dialogue is perfection there too.
Yeah.
When Joel's up against the wall and he's like, say whatever. What was he's like? Say whatever speech you have rehearsed and get it over with.
Yeah, he knows he knows this. I mean, he may not even know necessarily why she's there because he had a long sordid past, but he's like, he knows this scenario.
Yeah, and he knows. Well, he also knows once it happened too. Like his past caught up with him. It doesn't matter what he did. Something he did in the past is now caught up to him, but he's paying for it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that's so remarkable about this game, and that really is just characteristic of, what separates good storytelling from great storytelling is, like, actions have consequences.
Yes.
And they develop meaningful consequences for every action in the game.
Yeah, 100%.
And you just don't see that in gaming. It's kind of like it's generally speaking a medium that panders.
This game is one of the few games that has like nuance with its story.
Absolutely.
Like the only other game I can think of that has the same amount of nuance as The Last of Us might be Spec Ops: The Line when it came out on PS3 and Xbox 360. But I can't think of any game that like has the same amount of nuance as this one.
I mean, there are some that kind of get deep or philosophical in their own way, or they explore one particular facet of storytelling in some particular way, but none of them is like as narratively challenging and ambitious as this one. I think it was one of the videos you shared with me, Scott, the Girlfriend Reviews, and the term she used stuck in my head, talking about ego death.
Yes.
And how they, like, what's unique to this medium and The Last of Us is the first game that is truly capitalized on the potential, like the kind of singular, unique potential that this medium has when it comes to storytelling is when it comes to ego death. You know, in a book or a movie, you can become you become a spectator for somebody you don't like necessarily, and you kind of get to know them, and maybe your opinion changes. But The Last of Us makes you complicit in the actions of somebody you hate. No, more than complicit, they make you directly active. You have to control her as she would control herself in order to express the story. And
even in, like, before we get back to the plot, in games nowadays too, we're so used to like having a story choice.
Yeah, you can either be the Paragon or the Renegade, and
and like we're so used to like games giving us a choice now. Where this game doesn't give us a choice. It's a story that they've written and we're playing through it, which makes us complicit in the actions of all the characters.
Yeah, there was a sequence late in the game where Ellie is torturing one of the Firefly doctors from the first game, Nora, for information. Nora has been infected with the fungal virus. She knows she's going to die, and one of her last fuck yous is to not give any information to Ellie. Well, now you're playing as Ellie, and you have to beat this woman to death with a pipe in order to extract the information that you need to find out where Abby is.
Yeah.
And the whole game, the whole sequence is just, no, I'm not going to tell you. And like, bitch, you're going to tell me what I want to fucking know or I'm going to kill you. Press square. Funk.
And that sequence makes you feel like the monster in a monster movie. Like, like the red lighting, like she's helpless on the ground, her veins are turning black, she's sick, you're unfazed because you're immune. And so there's this like sort of orbiting plot lines that all center around your immunity, but it's sort of irrelevant now, but it's still there. It's like the elephant in the room. And it's like, guess what? I was the one that Joel saved, and now you're dealing with me. But then, like, there's never been a game where, you know, it's like mash square to strangle somebody you love, and you're like, oh God, no. But if I don't, that person's gonna kill me, and the game's gonna be over. And I mean, it's just.
If this were Mass Effect, that scene would have had like 3 alternate choices where you could have tortured them, you could have saved them, you could have developed a cure, you could have like sweet talked them, try to romance her. But here the only option is you're going to fucking bludgeon her with a pipe because that's what we're going to do. You, the player, are not in control. This is Ellie's story, and you're going to do what she goddamn well wants you to do. You don't have a choice. You are going to beat her with the pipe.
Yep.
That's it.
It contributes to this like overarching feeling of like helplessness that kind of becomes, and which really almost provides its own interesting sort of metaphor for the trauma that she is going through. One of the creators of the game, I forgot her name, she talks about how at the end...
Is it Haley Gross?
Yeah. She talks about how it's not even so much for Ellie. Her decision to leave the farm is, yes, it's about this grief for Joel that's all-consuming, but it's even more so, or at least as much, about the trauma that's making her like not even a functioning person anymore. So she has to kind of confront the source of this trauma. She doesn't even know what's going to come of it, but it's the only solution that's left to her because she's not even living anymore. Mm-hmm. And that kind of works with this feeling where it's like you're on this just slow rails pointing down and you can't get off, and you have to see it through to the end and you don't know what's at the bottom. The whole game kind of feels like that. And
that farmhouse scene you mentioned earlier, I spent that whole sequence when she's going back and forth with Dina about, will she go after Abby or will she stay here with her wife and their son? And it's just kind of like, I wanted to just stop the game and just like, Abby, just stay at home. You don't need to go after Abby.
Yeah.
You two have done what you needed to do. Just let the credits roll. Have your happy ending. Fucking forget about her. Forget about Abby. You don't have to do this. But again, it's not one of those decisions that, as the player, you get to make. This isn't your game. This is their story.
Absolutely. And every decision and every thing they present you with in that sequence is so meaningful. You see Ellie trying so hard to be happy and to appreciate this life that she has. And we see glimpses of it, and then the barn sequence, which is just so well done. And of course culminating in the ugly crying scene, at least for me.
Yep.
But and they talk about how they each flashback kind of parcels out a little bit more of the backstory that led up to everything in this game and kind of informs Ellie's decisions. But by parceling out these flashbacks, at that point in time, you don't know if the last thing Ellie ever said to Joel was, fuck you, go, get out of here, you have no right. And so at that point, you have this understanding that that's part of the reason why she has to go pursue this, is because she's left with this memory that's she was hurtful to Joel,
Yes.
and it's just, there's so much nuance and everything going on, every moment.
So I think just to rewind a bit, just to make the narrative a bit more clear, we slowly learn about what happened between Ellie and Joel as the game moves forward. But just to at least get people up to speed, the scene with Joel being slow tortured to death with the golf club ends with Ellie finding Joel, and she gets pinned down and she watches Abby crush Joel's skull with a golf club.
You want to do your little joke here, Scott? I know you got a good one.
Oh, that Abby scored a Joel in one?
Yeah. Now, see, that's the one sequence. Given all of the online harassment that the trolls have launched toward Naughty Dog and the actress who voices Abby, in hindsight, that's the one scene that I'm wishing the players, that the developers, that Naughty Dog would have made you complicit in.
Yes.
They should have had it cut so that you could play as Abby and make you kill Joel.
And then they could have given us a trophy that said Joel in one.
Yes.
There's a line or two that Ellie says in there that are almost the view, the person watching, playing the game is almost the one speaking there, where she's just saying, Joel, get up, just get the fuck up, Joel.
Yeah,
and
she's like, Joel, get up, fucking get up.
Yeah, it's like she's speaking your denial that this beloved figure in your life, that this hero that you play. I mean, again, he's not a hero, but he kind of is in your heart if you've played the first game.
Yeah. You understand why he did what he did.
Exactly.
I think particularly as a parent, I didn't have children when the first Last of Us game came out. Now I have two, and it's I totally get it. If anything ever happened to them, I would raise the earth and burn your house to the ground if I needed to protect them. So I fully understand Joel's reasoning in the first game, but I also, there's that intellectual part where you kind of get the Mr. Spock, where the needs of the one do not outweigh the needs of the many. Where
I will say there's a nice touch when you see Joel's brains on the golf club.
Yeah. And it's I knew Joel would die in this game, but I didn't know when. So when it happened, when everything started to come down, it was that was a huge oh shit moment for me. I had prepared myself for it to be later in the game, so it actually caught me off guard that it came so soon.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so violently. I mean, they do not pull any punches at all.
No, you see his head cave in.
It's fucking brutal.
I mean, he's looking at her, and you can't even tell if he sees her at that last point. I mean, it is like,
and then
whisked away.
And then there's people arguing this isn't a horror game after sitting through that fucking cutscene.
And then there's like, what was it, after Abby kills Joel, just Ellie screams like, "I'm gonna fucking kill you."
Mm-hmm. And then that kind of like the way they cover up the rest of the dialogue that takes place in that room with
ringing noise.
It's the literary technique of her, the ringing noise. All of it's just masterful.
Yeah, I still wish they would have had you play as Abby just as a final fuck you. Like if they do a patch for this game, I think they ought to just make like the troll patch and make you play as Abby. Oh, you didn't like it the first time around? Here, try this, fuckers.
Something else about killing Joel off so soon was when that first Joel flashback hits.
Oh, that's a really special flashback.
I wasn't ready for it, like emotionally. It made every following moment where you get a glimpse or an interaction with Joel so much more meaningful and significant. Like,
is that the museum, the dinosaur? Yeah.
Yes.
It's a fucking dinosaur.
One thing I will say though, the scene after Joel dies, when Ellie goes to Joel's house, I kind of sobbed when I saw all the flowers in the lawn from Joel's house.
Yeah.
But one thing I noticed on my second playthrough is every time you interact with an item, Ellie's hands are constantly shaking.
Mm. Oh wow.
And another thing I noticed on my second playthrough was Ellie is a big fan of outer space, which we'll discuss in a bit. But Joel actually had a space book next to his bed.
Oh,
so he was reading about like space and stuff to like.
Oh man.
Talk to Ellie and.
Now I'm gonna fucking cry.
Or the fact that he kept the museum brochure.
Yeah. Sure. Jesus.
Like.
My heart can't take reliving this.
No.
Like, Scott, you jumped right into a second playthrough. I'm like, I still need time to recover. I finished this game like a week or two ago, and I'm like, I'm not ready to go back into this world. I'm gonna go play a nice, charming game like Fallout 76. I'm gonna go live in an apocalyptic wasteland and get radiation poisoning. I'm not ready for The Last of Us again.
To be fair, I watched Let's Plays of people reacting to the scenes that affected me the most. So now they don't really affect me as much as they did the first playthrough.
I don't know if we've mentioned this or talked about this, but the spaceship thing actually wasn't even just developed in this game. The seed of that was planted in the first game when Joel asks, what she wants to be or what she wanted to be growing up or whatever, and she said an astronaut. Like, so this, like, the roots were like way deep when it comes to these stories and these characters.
In The Last of Us, her favorite comic book is a space comic book, right? So she's always had a fascination with like outer space and dinosaurs and stuff.
I do like when you're going through Washington and you've got to go through like the convention center that had the Comic-Con. Yeah. And Jesse's kind of giving her shit. It's like, it's like, oh, they were all comic book nerds like you.
And Ellie's like, we were born in the wrong time, man.
And I just love this idea that in this post-apocalyptic wasteland, like, she has still found comic books and has come to revere them. Yeah. I really appreciate that. Awesome. Like, even after the end of the world, the geeks will still be around. We'll still be looting comic book shops for issue number 1 that now has no value. Except to us, because we love it. I love that idea.
Well, actually, as we bring everything to get to Seattle, the end of that scene reveals that Joel's brother Tommy has left to hunt down Abby and didn't want anyone else to leave. And Tommy's wife lets Ellie and her girlfriend, Dina, head to Seattle to bring Tommy back. And thus begins the journey.
Yes.
Which is a dark and grueling experience.
Wait, all of that is in the beginning?
Yeah, that's just the beginning 2 hours of like a 30-hour game.
Oh. It took me like 4 hours because I had to keep exploring. I had to go, what's behind this tree? Is there a trophy back here? Can I find another playing card over by this car that's way off on the left side of the screen that you're not supposed to go to?
So they go to Seattle, and the game takes place over 3 days. Well, most of the game takes place over 3 days in Seattle.
And it feels like it's in real time. This is such a long game.
It is. Day one, they get to Seattle, and the first day is actually really sweet. Like, nothing really sad happens the first day until the end. But, like, you wander around the ruins of Seattle, you find a guitar shop, Ellie plays a cover of Take On Me for Dina, and it's really sweet. Then you find
The synagogue.
You find the synagogue, and Dina talks about Judaism. And, like, they're a really sweet couple. Like, I love Ellie and Dina as a couple.
Yeah. And it was just a lot of great representation in this game.
Oh, very much so. Like,
minus the odd lack of black people. But
well, there was a lot of Asian people.
Yeah, you had a lot of Asians. There was a lot of lesbian. There was a lot of nods towards homosexuality. You can find letters of couples that had been separated.
Yep.
And you see a lot of conversations going back and forth between these letters from
also,
a man to his husband.
Yeah, and there's also like the couple from the lesbian bookshop.
Mm-hmm.
And one joined the Wolves and the other joined the Seraphites.
Mm-hmm. No, and the Seraphites are a religious cult.
Yes.
They're basically the MAGA 2020 version back into the fungi people.
That letter the kid writes to Santa breaks me.
Oh, in the beginning, that broke me too when I first read it.
I don't remember that. I don't know if I missed it.
He's asking Santa for a dog, and he's also asking Santa, what was it, to like not make his dad cry at night anymore?
So he said, so it's like he's wishing for a big dog, and then he lists the reasons why he wants the big dog.
It's something about his dad crying at night.
He says, I want a big dog. It could help my dad when he's out in the woods hunting. It could also help protect the house from the monsters. It could also keep me company when my dad locks himself in the room or locks himself in the bedroom. And it's like just a simple, like, repetitive sentence structure because it's like a little kid. But that last one just hits so hard. Like, could also help keep me company when my dad locks himself in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember that, but I suspect there's a lot of this game that I have repressed and have forgotten.
Well, the note's that note's hidden, actually. Yeah. It's like in the beginning, you have to find it in an abandoned house if you decide to search that house.
Yeah, I definitely missed a lot of artifacts.
But in day one in Seattle, Ellie finds the remains of two wolves. So the two groups in Seattle are the WLF, the Washington Liberation Front.
Yeah,
who call themselves the
clarify.
Wolves.
Yeah, it's not animal wolves.
Yeah, they're a paramilitary organization pretty much, and their logo is a wolf, and they're the Washington Liberation Front, and their enemies are a religious cult called the Seraphites, who are like this ultra
evangelical nut
They're
jobs
evangelical
with bows and arrows.
Like they don't use technology.
Yeah.
They view technology to be like a curse on the world, and that's why the fungus thing happened.
They're insane Amish.
Live off the land again. But the hunters are given exceptions to use technology.
Nice. Makes sense.
So, like, there's kind of like hypocrisy in their religion as well.
What a shocker. That's unheard of.
But they're at war against the WLF. And Abby and Ellie are both in the middle of it all.
There was a truce between the wolves and the Seraphites, and it got broken.
Yes. And so the day one, Ellie finds two wolves who have been tortured to death. And she realizes that Tommy did that, so they're on the right path to find Tommy. And on their warpath, Ellie comes across one of the guys who killed Joel. Ellie then kills him.
Wait,
pretty brutally.
Randomly finds him?
They get captured. The horse hits they're on a horse that hits like a landmine, and the wolves capture them. And that's where Ellie meets one of the guys who killed Joel.
Okay.
And there's a fight and confrontation between them.
There's a few jump scares in this game that got me good, and that horse was one of them. You're just like wandering around so peacefully, and then boom.
Yeah, Dina's
and they shoot the fucking horse in the head.
Yeah. You should have a snack and this and that. Like, you're just talking about what meal you're about to have. And
And then you blow up.
And so then Ellie and Dina have to fight and escape capture from the WLF, who have instructions to kill all trespassers.
This is a nice badass moment for Dina, too, coming through the skylight. I really like that part.
Dina shoots one of the guys through the skylight, then she gets shot at, and the skylight breaks beneath her, falls on her back. Then Ellie breaks free from the knot that she's being tied up in and stabs this guy in the neck several times.
Yeah.
And it is brutal.
It is.
And then, like, to fast forward a bit, they escape the wolves. Dina finds out that Ellie's immune to the virus because her gas mask breaks in the sewers where all the spores are. And she saw Ellie breathe in spores without coughing or getting infected. And then Ellie finds out Dina's pregnant. So that's a fun time for everybody.
Yeah. And Ellie loses it and basically tells Dina she's a liability.
Yeah. No, it's not a liability, it's a burden. When she's like, I didn't want to be a burden, Ellie goes, you're a burden now, aren't you?
Yeah. Man, that was another tough scene.
And then Ellie sets up the electricity for this like theater they're staying in. And then we have the museum flashback with Ellie and Joel.
Her birthday present.
Begins the process of just breaking you over its knee again.
Again. And again.
And again. And the thing ends with Ellie and Joel finding pretty much a person who was part of the Fireflies and lived in this museum, and he's written all his horrible confessions on the wall. It's like, I rounded them up in a van and doused it in fire. And like
they only wanted food or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, like
I killed the children last.
Yeah.
Like
that was such a creepy scene. Like going through this museum and seeing all these suicide notes basically that he's left behind on all the different wings of the exhibits.
Then you find his dead body, just like there is no light written above it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that whole sequence is such an excellent metaphor in general, where you have this sort of bright museum where where you get like the bright side of Joel and Ellie's relationship, like maybe even the brightest side, but then lurking very close by, just like one building away, is this dark museum where things have gone overgrown and there's kind of secrets buried there, dark things buried there.
Yeah, and then it ends with the Firefly logo and Liars written beneath it. And then we get to day 2.
So good.
We're gonna have to speed this up a little bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think we need to recap this entire 30-hour game. Yeah, we'll just go all over the place.
So, I don't know if you noticed this, because I certainly didn't, but you might be happy to take note of this particular detail, Mike. In the very last return to the farmhouse sequence, Ellie is wearing the bracelet that Dina gave her.
Oh.
And there's speculation. There's speculation that that's led to a lot of speculation that, I think we can certainly agree that definitely signifies that she's not she doesn't intend to just be alone anymore.
Oh, no. She goes back to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. She finds Dina and their son, and they live happily ever after. Exactly. That's it. She has made amends. It's a happy ending, and I will not be hearing otherwise, God damn it.
Exactly. And now you have actual substantial proof. You can even upgrade that to she went to Jackson first and ran straight into fucking Dina's arms before even going to the farmhouse to put her memory of Joel to rest.
Yeah, she just had to go back for the guitar.
Yeah, yep. And that was it. She went back to say goodbye.
Perfect. I'm not crying.
No, I'm not crying. Not even a little bit.
No.
I actually,
you know what? It's the whiskey. In my head. I think I've just had too much whiskey during this episode. So.
Oh no!
I will say though, before we continue on, so we know Abby's going to Seattle. Not Ellie. Ellie's going to Seattle to kill Abby. The plot has accumulation where Abby and Ellie have a confrontation, and then the game gives us a flashback where we play fucking 10 hours as Abby.
Yeah.
That's where you find out that in the end of the first game, the doctor who's going to make the vaccine was Abby's father.
And Joel brutally murdered him.
Yep.
And she saw it.
Abby has spent the next 4 years of her life like bulking herself up.
She is a fucking tank. Like, she has got a physique. She's a tough lady. She is very dedicated on pursuing this path of revenge.
Yep. And then we even find out that she gets her revenge and she realizes it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Like, none of it was worth it. All her relationships are ruined. She's ruined everything about her life, and she doesn't feel any better.
Yeah. And when Ellie comes after her, she's just like, why are you after me? Like, we gave you a chance. You could have just left this. I got what I needed. Like, you just go away.
We let you both live, and you wasted it.
Yeah. And it's like playing through Abby. It's like, yeah, that's a really valid take, actually. I mean.
And I will say, though, with Abby, at first I was just like, fuck you, Naughty Dog. I don't wanna play as this person.
Yeah.
But
this
like,
game
I warmed
really
up to
manipulates you so fucking much.
It does.
And
I warmed up a lot to Abby with Lev.
I think there's so much manipulation in this game, and that's not a knock against it. I'm perfectly fine with a narrative as powerful as this being able to pull on my heartstrings and fuck around with my emotions like this because it was so expertly done. But it does occur to me, going back to the Trolls for a minute, of just the level of entitlement they have toward this game and this series that operates on so many different levels. Like, they think they're entitled to playing only as the white male hero. They don't want to play as a woman because it'll give them the gay.
We're also forgetting that the E3 trailer that showed Ellie and Dina making out, which is one of the endgame cinematics.
Yeah.
People were mad about that when that first got released. They were like, oh, we don't care about Ellie being a lesbian, but it's like you guys were like having hate boners over Ellie making out with a girl.
Yeah.
And it's like E3 trailer.
I've seen a lot of people saying nobody had any problems with the lesbian agenda or whatever in Left Behind, which was the DLC for the first game, as like some sort of weird kind of retroactive justification of their hatred for the second game. Like, it's totally about something else. But honestly, if you look back at the response for Left Behind, it was almost 90% people being pissed off about there being lesbian.
Yeah. And one thing I do want to say, too, just for the narrative to make sense to people, the end of Ellie's story in Seattle, we find out that Joel tells Ellie the truth of what happened, and Ellie has not spoken to Joel in 2 years. So, like, when Joel died, we're led to believe the last interaction they had was Joel lying to her, which leads to her guilt. And it's a pretty heavy scene, too. Yeah. I ugly cried at that scene, actually.
I mean, this game just goes straight to the wall so many times on depictions of violence, their emotional grounding, their characterizations. It's just...
And the fact they had so much representation in this game and none of it was tokenized.
No, not at all. But you hear all the anger at this game. It's like, oh, it's just pandering. Well, excuse me for having a game that depicts the fucking world as it is, where you actually have varieties of human life, you know?
Yeah.
The fundamental issue there is that this is a demographic that's been pandered to for so long that the moment one game doesn't do it, it feels like
my freedoms are being oppressed.
Yeah. Like, I mean, the details, like, even, I don't know, I'm sure some of you sat on the tractor long enough to hear Ellie singing about her little baby potato. Like,
yes.
Like, break me. I thought the game was going to end on that scene.
I will say one thing that made me laugh during this game. There's a hidden memo in, like, a watchtower of someone bored in a patrol and they drew a bunch of penises.
It's another one I missed.
And I also like the banter between Jesse and Ellie in Seattle when Ellie was talking to Jesse and she's like, Joel thought I had a crush on you. And Jesse's like, oh, he did? And Ellie's like, yeah, you're handsome, whatever, but I'm not just into your type, you know? And he's like, what, Asians?
The one thing that I like is when they're in the gay bookstore, you know, they've grown up in this post-apocalyptic wasteland of killer mushroom people.
Yep.
And Dina's like, what's with all the flags and the rainbows? What's with all the rainbow flags?
I like you like find like a lesbian book and she's like, what's this one? 2 chicks.
Yeah. Hey, it's
This one's
us.
two dudes.
And then you find out later that Dina took the book.
I feel like one thing we maybe haven't touched upon too much is what Abby's arc in the story is, and how that itself is a parallel to the arc that you experienced playing as Joel in the first game. So it's kind of like insult to injury, because first they have you kill Joel as this new character, and then have
the new
you
character becomes
undergo
Joel.
her redemption arc,
Yeah.
which is a parallel to his redemption arc. That was the one that, attached you to him in the first place. And
Yeah. Abby gets captured by the Seraphites and saved by a transgender named Lev and his sister,
Yara.
and she helps them escape from the Seraphites, and they create this little bond together.
That scene where like Lev and Abby are going to the hospital, and like the banter between Lev and Abby is like so fucking good.
The one part that I really liked was when you're being chased by Seraphite and they're calling Lev by her dead name or his dead name. And Lev asks Abby, "Aren't you wondering why they call me that?" And Abby's just like, "No, let's just get out of here."
Well, he's like, and then he goes, "Do you want to ask me about it?" And she's like, "Do you want me to ask you about it?" And he goes, "No." And she's like, "Okay."
It was just so well done. I really appreciated that.
And the fact that like they just accept Lev as like who he is.
Yeah.
Also, the scene where Lev says "fuck," and Abby's just like, "I didn't know Seraphite swore."
I also love just like the little like the culture clash between common expressions. Like he doesn't know what it means when she says cool.
Oh yeah.
And then later he tries to say cool, but he says cold. Like there's a difference.
And Abby's arc accumulates with Lev going to the Seraphite Island when the wolves are going to attack it, and Abby's afraid that Lev's mother is going to kill him, or he's going to die from the wolves. So Abby goes after him, and they find he went to visit the mother, and the mother tried to kill him, and he killed her in self-defense, which was a pretty harrowing scene for me as well. And then Yara gets killed.
So depressing.
Yep.
Yeah, it is. But, Daniel, that's a really excellent point, because, now that you've pointed that out, I can see Abby's raid of the island to save Lev. That definitely does mirror what Joel went through to try and rescue Ellie at the end of the first game. Really good point.
Yep, and Abby saves Lev, but Yara ends up getting killed by the leader of the Seraphites, who's played by Jeffrey Wright of Westworld fame.
Was it?
Yep.
Oh, that is interesting.
I hope
Yep,
he's not getting death threats online.
Shannon Woodward plays Dina, also of Westworld fame. One of the guys from Narcos played Manny.
Manny is so excellent.
Yeah, we didn't really touch too much on Manny, but he's pretty great.
I love when Abby's downstairs and trying to or when she's in Ground Zero in the scariest part of the game in the basement of the hospital, and
That
she's
freaked me the fuck out. Oh my god!
Like talking out loud and choosing her ideal partner to be down there with. Yeah, Manny would have been great.
Yeah. That whole hospital scene gave me anxiety like no other game I think has.
Oh god, no.
I was just
The
like,
hospital scene was nuts.
If I could control Abby, we'd be the fuck out of this place. I would not be going into the goddamn basement to try it. You want me to go even deeper into this mess? No.
Talking about the characterization here, they have you go confront her greatest fear of heights in the most tremendous way before going into the basement.
Oh god, yeah.
Save, Abby gets 10 save the cat moments in this game. And they're all excellent.
It starts with saving the zebra.
Yeah, save the zebra. Which is, a co-save the cat moment for her and her father. Yeah, I mean, just so many expert decisions.
Yeah, I forgot about the height. Oh my god, those bridges. I'm afraid of heights, so I'm kind of having some traumatic recall here.
Yeah.
True fear.
Yeah. Between that and the hospital, I'm getting shaky again.
The fact that she actually gets. Sorry.
I was going to say, before we get to California, I want to mention there's a note I found in the hospital that's hidden, and it's a patient as he's turning into an infected.
Oh man, that one.
And it opens up with just him complaining about everything. And then the last part is like, he's like begging for his wife. And then he's just like, hungry, food, me need food. And it just ends.
You know, playing this in the middle of a pandemic kind of brought a whole other level to the gameplay experience for me. Because I remember going through one of those areas and there's a big sign on there about wash your hands, which is something we have been inundated with the last few months. Like, okay, this is a bit on the nose. Like, and you know damn well nobody was wearing masks.
There's a whole conversation in this game about wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Somebody not wanting to.
It's important to wear it. They were very prescient. I can see why they had to hold off on releasing this a little bit, but Jesus, what perfect timing to release this game.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, yeah, this could be worse.
So
I'm glad I don't have to deal with this giant The Thing creature in the fucking hospital basement in real life.
Yeah.
before we get
the Rat King.
Yeah, that'll be the next stage of the coronavirus mutation.
Fuck that.
Don't play with it.
I will say though, for the end of Seattle,
COVID-20.
For the end of Seattle, we have to control Abby as she tries to kill Ellie, because Ellie has killed all her friends, including her love interest Owen and Owen's pregnant girlfriend.
Yeah.
And
Tommy, of course, blew off Manny's head.
Yep. So, like, and the end of Ellie's thing, she goes to, like, where Abby is supposed to be hanging out, and she finds two of Abby's friends. She ends up shooting one in the stomach, which is Owen, and then Owen's girlfriend, who's pregnant, Ellie then stabs her in the neck.
Yeah, and Abby and Owen kind of had a thing going.
Yep, and then Ellie found out that Owen's girlfriend's pregnant, and Ellie has, like, a full-blown anxiety attack.
Playing this whole game is an anxiety attack.
That is true.
It sounds like it.
So then you're playing as Abby trying to hunt down Ellie at her hideout. And the end of it is she breaks Ellie's arm. And then Dina comes in and stabs Ellie. And then Abby smashes Dina's head on the floor. And as Abby's about to kill Dina, Ellie asks her to stop. And she's like, she's pregnant. And then Abby just goes, good. And then Lev looks at her, and then Abby just stops.
Yeah.
And she's like, don't look for me ever again, and walks away.
I mean, the way the narratives run is so interesting because this scene happens after, like, the most heroic arc of the whole story, which is going to the island. Yeah. And you get that absolutely earned tear-jerking line where you've just murdered, you've murdered, like, some of your own people, and Lev, who's distraught because his sister has been killed, says, those were your people, and Abby just grabs him and says, you're my people. And she goes through all of this crazy journey, riding a horse through a burning town, fighting, like, everything, and comes back just to find, like, her dog and her friends just lying in pools of blood dead. like it is, and it's harrowing. It's coming. Yeah, it's
And then the end of the game, Ellie finds out that Abby's in Santa Barbara, and she can't let Abby go.
Yeah,
so
well, Tommy comes to the farmhouse trying to, like, guilt trip her into finishing this.
Fucking Tommy.
Oh, my God. I wanted to pistol whip that son of a bitch by that point.
I was so broken. And just to see Tommy that broken, oh, man, all of it just ruined me.
Ellie, who cares what this guy's saying? Just let him go. Let him go be pissed off. Just stay home. This is done. We're done.
And then you have to go to Santa Barbara to find Abby, who's been kidnapped by a group called the Rattlers, who are pretty much slavers.
Yeah.
And then you work through the Rattler camp, and you find Abby pretty much crucified.
On the beach.
With Lev also being crucified.
Yeah.
Ellie lets Abby go.
I really like the indication of how much time has passed when you find Abby. Her physique has really slimmed down. She's lost a lot of muscle mass. She's not the same Abby that you started this game because she's been in confinement for such a prolonged time.
One thing I like, I hate saying I like because this scene's so fucked up. One thing I like what Naughty Dog did with that scene
Appreciate. I think you appreciate.
No, I like it.
Okay.
You see one person with a giant braid, and you're like, oh, that's Abby. And then you go, oh, it's not Abby.
That whole sequence, that whole final fight, everything just feels so futile. Because it's like at that point, you've murdered so many people. Ellie is so beat up. Abby is so beat up. You know what you're doing isn't right, but like you don't know what else to do. And it just everything kind of so perfectly mirrors where the characters are at. The way you feel playing that scene, or the way I felt playing that scene at
100%,
least.
100%.
Yeah.
Like,
by the time I got into this end game, I was just so fucking exhausted. I was like, just be done already. This is so tiring.
Like Ellie frees Abby and Abby frees Lev, and they walk to the boats because Abby's trying to get to Kathleen Island.
Like
because
she's been on a post for
there.
3 days hanging. Like she's like, I don't care who you are, you untie me, and that's all that matters to me right now.
And then Ellie goes and like pushes Abby into the ocean, and Abby's like, I won't fight you. And then Ellie puts a knife to Lev's throat, and she's like, yes, you will.
Yeah. And I'll admit, when you're controlling, or I think you're controlling Ellie at the end where you're trying to drown Abby in the ocean. I'm like, I don't want to do this. Just stop.
Yeah, she is drowning Abby. Like she has the edge on it. Abby bites off 2 of her fingers, but she's still going.
Nice.
And then she has a flashback to her last conversation with Joel, and she lets Abby go.
It's just like a flicker of a flashback, and it's like just enough to kind of convey a particular message. And what's interesting on so many levels about it too is that the scene she flashes back to is a scene that was ultimately, the theme of that scene was forgiveness.
Yes.
It was about her, because we get the rest of that scene later, but it's kind of like a memory that's been repressed or withheld from us in a way.
Yeah. And the whole game,
that moment.
The whole game, her flashbacks are just Joel with his head caved in. But at this moment, it's no longer Joel with his head caved in. It's now Joel at peace playing guitar. As in, Abby went through a similar thing, while her flashbacks were like her dead father, or like her flashbacks were like Lev and Yara dead. But
they're all in the room where her dead father died. It was always her walking down that hallway to where she found her father dead on the floor. And actually, after she helps fix Yara's arm, is the first time she dreams of her father in a pleasant light in the course of things. So there's just so many parallels and kind of juxtapositions taking place.
And so Ellie lets Abby go, and Ellie returns to Jackson. I'm going to say that because she has Dina's bracelet, and in Santa Barbara she did not have Dina's bracelet. So I'm convinced she went to Jackson first.
It could have been in her backpack, but like I don't see Ellie putting it on until she has like Dina's permission to wear it.
Yeah.
Again.
And then so she goes to the farmhouse, and she finds a guitar Joel gave her, and she tries to play Future Days by Pearl Jam, and she can't because her fingers have been bitten off. And then she has a flashback to her last conversation with Joel, which is her saying that she's going to try to forgive him, and that was the night before he was killed the next day.
Yeah, it's that long.
And then that's the end of the game.
That long road to forgiveness just got a whole lot longer and more complicated. And can I just want to remark on one final moment. That moment when you get like a glimpse of the old Joel, when they're on the porch there, he's so calm, he's playing guitar, but then she confronts him and says, like, you're such an asshole, because he's being like, he can't help but be her dad. He's just like, there's like, you want nothing to do with me, fine, I'll just be your dad behind the scenes. Like, I'm gonna always fuck with your routes to make sure you're safe. I'm gonna irritate everybody around you. Like,
what was that stupid dad joke he tells her?
Oh, what's
about a clock?
Clock.
Yeah,
it's time consuming.
Yeah, it's time.
Oh yeah, and
so
bad. You get that final moment where they come to a head again, and she says, "You're such an asshole. Like my life, if my life would have had meaning, you took that away from me." And he just straightens up slowly, and he says, "If God gave me a second chance somehow to go back to that day, I would do it all over again."
And you see like darkness take over his face a little bit.
You do.
He does it too.
And you just you see that man who's like, he'd make a fucking ocean of dead bodies just for you, and he did. And nothing has changed. And it's chills. I'm getting chills right now. Just
Yeah.
And then the game ends with Abby putting Joel's guitar down and walking off into the distance.
Yeah. As much as I want to kind of like fanfic the ending and have her give her that happy ending and rediscovering her wife and her child, rather than the downbeat ending where it's like your actions have had consequences and your lust for revenge has cost you everything you hold dear. I really do appreciate the ending if you take it as a literal message without trying to infer anything from the bracelet.
Yeah.
I really like that dark, moody, emotional ending. And I'm going to cap that by saying I also fucking loved the ending to The Sopranos and the cut to black.
I do too.
Like, those are the kind of endings I dig.
No Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
Save your pat happy endings for somebody else. Give me the real ending.
I will say, though, one thing at least in regards to the bracelet, is like Naughty Dog is so particular with what they put in these games.
Yeah.
That like this isn't a mistake that they put the bracelet back onto Ellie. There is a reason why it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And
but
they also hide it. They put it on display, but they hide it, and they do that by what is the relevant visual or most what imagery on the screen is going to be like the most visually engaging and draw your eyes. So the first time I played the game, I didn't know the bracelet, and that's because you're playing the guitar, and the game is you have to watch the chords. But then the next most visually interesting and arresting detail is the fact that her two stumps, where she got her fingers bitten off, aren't hitting the right chords anymore. But this whole time, if you actually take a step back and address what the whole entire picture is showing you, it's not just the bleakness and the bitterness and the sadness of what she lost and the connection she lost with Joel. She's actually got the bracelet resting right on top of the guitar in plain view. And it suggests it's much more indicative of her path towards healing as a whole. But they even hide that from you by just giving you something more interesting to look at. It's really just compelling all across the board.
It's a really great sleight of hand.
I agree.
Yeah, I didn't even pick up on that bracelet. I didn't see it at all. I was caught up in, like you say, you have to play the guitar, so I'm caught up in trying to follow those visual cues of what you need to do next to progress. I missed the bracelet. I was too wrapped up in the emotions of it.
I have a question. Did you guys sit through the whole credits?
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
I cried when the Wayfaring Stranger cover came on.
Oh, God.
I ugly cried when that happened.
When Ellie sings the line about "I'm going to see my father," and then Joel sings the line about soon to be leaving his earthly body or something along those lines. Oh, break me.
And then
I can't anymore. Are we almost? My heart can't take this more.
On a bright note. I'm going to end on a bright note. Mike, did you notice where Abby's boat is at the end screen?
You mean the start screen?
Yeah, the start screen
on the beach
changes once you finish the game.
Yeah,
but you know which beach it's on?
Isn't it the beach that you went to?
No, it's Catalina Island.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I don't know geography.
It's I mean, don't feel bad. I didn't know that either until somebody else with more. Apparently, that tent that's in the background is an iconic fixture of Catalina Island, so they put that there as an identifier.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen Catalina Island. I think it was mentioned in Michael Connolly's Blood Work, but I don't know what it looks like.
And Step Brothers, because the fucking Catalina wine mixer.
Oh yeah, I never saw it.
It's the fucking Catalina wine mixer.
Never saw it. Don't know that movie.
Even that is just such an artful little like way of kind of indicating that Lev and Abby are safe and got their happy ending. And there's an implicit irony and kind of an unintentional positive streak in this whole sequence, which is that if you didn't pursue your revenge and you didn't confront that trauma, they would have died. You didn't just spare them, you saved them.
Yeah.
And
God
there's
damn
something
it, Dan.
really like really powerful about that. Like, I mean,
Jesus Christ.
Whiskey drowns those tears, Mike.
You know, people tell me I'm a happy drunk, but this is not a good episode for this.
There's no such thing as a happy drunk when you're talking about The Last of Us 2.
No, there fucking
that
isn't.
Is very true.
You know, just even trying to take this game as a whole, like, I have no idea what Naughty Dog is going to do next. But if for whatever reason this ended up being their final game, I mean, this is kind of like the perfect capper for this company as a developer. It takes so much of what they've done with the first game, but also with their work in the Uncharted series, and has kind of merged the two as an excellent final progression of these massive titles they've developed over the last decade, and just put a final bow on everything.
It is.
Yeah. It's a great swan song to end for the like PS4 development.
Yeah.
Just like Last of Us was a great swan song to end the PS3 development.
God damn it. There's so much. There's so many endings. This game was definitely like a masterpiece of a video game. Yeah.
It's not a fun game. It's pretty miserable a lot of the time.
Oh, yeah, completely.
I'm going to take it farther and say, this is like, regardless of medium, a masterpiece. In my opinion, it's one of my favorite stories ever told at this point. I think. I mean, that's a long list, but it is just compelling.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it's also for those people who think that video games cannot be art. This is a wonderful fuck you to that crowd.
This game is art.
100% it is. It is absolutely fantastic. It is incredibly written. It's so well produced. I mean, the production values, the amount of money that they must have poured into this thing to get things like the nature effects and the weathering and the scenery. I mean, it's just astounding to look at.
The actors they
visually
hired to even do this as well.
Actors who are now suffering death threats online because people are fucking assholes.
Neil Druckmann's suffering death threats too.
Yeah. He gets the anti-Semitism too.
Anti-Semitism.
Anti-Semitism flavored.
Yeah, of course.
Well, he is from Israel.
Yeah.
No, it's ridiculous. Like, I think if you don't like The Last of Us 2,
don't play it. If you don't like the game, don't play it. Right. Figure it out. Find a fucking life and move on.
Like, if I read, like, a Laird Barron book, and I'm very offended or I hate this Laird Barron book, I'm not going to go to Laird and be like, Laird, fuck you.
Well, also, that would be impossible.
Yeah, Laird would come kick my ass.
You need to find... Okay, so, like, if you... maybe you read some Harry Potter and found out about J.K. Rowling's predilections.
Dude, I don't want to
just say, you know what, I'm not going to read any more J.K. Rowling.
Yeah. I don't want to get into J.K. Rowling on this podcast, but holy shit, those Twitter threads, man.
I think my favorite peripheral remark on the J.K. Rowling tweet was just the greatest blessing is that Tolkien is no longer alive to post things on Twitter.
Oh, even better. Thank fucking God, H.P. Lovecraft did not live long enough for the internet, because holy fuck. His profile image would be him in a red MAGA hat right now on Twitter posting shit.
Can I tell a funny joke I read online today to cheer us up after this podcast? It involves H.P. Lovecraft.
Back at it again with the fish people.
No, it is the funniest H.P. Lovecraft story is the one where some guy's family offended an evil wizard who then cursed his entire family, saying that all the men would die before they hit like 30. The protagonist is going crazy, trying to find a spell to break the curse, and then the big reveal was the wizard was just literally breaking into the house and killing them himself. This is missing my favorite detail, namely that the evil wizard is named Charles the Sorcerer. Your last one is Chuck Wizard's cursive shoots you in the face. So at least give us a laugh at the end.
That's cool.
The one that I thought was really funny, going back to J.K. Rowling, is this Twitter user who made like a fake conversation. He had declared himself to be the new editor for Harry Potter, and J.K. Rowling supposedly DM'd him saying, you have to stop this. And he goes, wow, I'm J.K. He's like, okay, I accept your apology. He goes, no, I mean, I'm J.K. now. I'm J.K. Rowling. By the way, Harry Potter's Italian now. He's like, no, he's not. Yes, in fact, his name is now Giuseppe Stromboli.
I like the one where it's a imaginary dialogue between J.K. Rowling and Clive Barker, in which they're discussing like their impact on the gay community, and it just ends with Barker saying, "Bitch, I wrote Nightbreed."
It was the Midnight Society, I think, is what they're called.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the best Twitter. If you can
I
follow.
love the Midnight Society.
They did the one with Thomas Legati's birthday this past week, and it was hilarious.
But oh man, I will say though, like if you play PS4 games, The Last of Us Part 2 is a must-have. I'm not going to give the sad bits of it.
And if you haven't played the first one, and you can get the first Last of Us remastered for PS4.
Yep.
And you can live the whole depressing series.
Yeah. And there's also the HBO series coming out, which should also be very happy.
Yeah, that's going to break everybody.
Bundles of joy all across the board. I mean, it's kind of remarkable. Like, looking back on the first game now after playing the second makes the first game seem like such a sweet story. Like, it's just such a nice story now.
It's just a father and his surrogate daughter touring the country. What could go wrong?
One thing I love with The Last of Us is, like, Neil Druckmann's journey to make that game. He came over from Israel when he was a teenager, and he went to art school, and he had a comic book called The Turning. And if you played Last of Us, The Turning's referenced in The Last of Us a few times. And this comic book is about a zombie apocalypse involving an older man who is infected trying to protect a younger girl. And he never sold the comic, but that became the blueprint for The Last of Us.
Oh, wow.
And when he got a job at Naughty Dog, he kept on working up the chain until he was part of like the script team, and he met with one of the Naughty Dog guys and pitched this idea. And he got his own development team to like write this game and create everything.
Wow.
And now he's the vice president of Naughty Dog.
And his whole directorial style kind of mirrors that entire journey. Like, I know you, Scott, watched the making of The Last of Us, but if Mike, if you haven't, it's on the remastered edition, so you can go on there and there's like an hour-long making of, and the directorial work he put in, like, there's my favorite part of that whole making of, except for the joke ending of The Last of Us, which is brilliant and hilarious. My favorite part is, so there's that whole scene that's built around at the beginning of the very first game where Joel's daughter dies in his arms, and the actor Troy Baker, like, he summoned up his most heart-wrenching memory, and he put on his best "I'm a good actor" performance, like, in his own words. Like, he put on his clinic, like, of grief and emotion, and Druckmann just kept making him come back and like try, like, I just want you to try this. And then what they ended up settling on was like just revolving around one particular little storytelling beat. And when they like compared the versions when it was done, even Baker was like, that dude was right. Like, I was mad. I was pissed because I felt offended that like I didn't do a good enough job, but he was right. Like, and his just like his sense of the moment and where the characters are, and in like each given moment is masterful. Like, it's,
yeah. I think for part 2, whenever they had to do another take for their scenes, they just kicked Troy in the balls with a steel-toed boot and said, all right, now read this.
Well, the joke ending is actually, you know, when they're all recording and he's going to save Ellie, and there's that dialogue that happens with, I'm forgetting her name, but the woman, Marlene. Well, they all have theater experience, like singing theater experience. And so Druckmann went around to everybody but Troy Baker and told them all to start singing their lines and just to see what Troy would do. And in the moment, in this super dramatic moment where he's like, you know, I will save her, like whatever, he just burst out and it just turned into a musical version of the ending where he's like, I will save her, like, and he just went along with it. It's hilarious.
That is amazing. All right, I got to watch that.
Yeah, it's really great. But no, like these games are just, they're really powerful stories, and I'm really happy they exist, despite all the hate that goes around the second one.
I still can't believe there are people arguing that this isn't a horror game. And what fucking world do you live on? Like, how do you get through the hospital level? Just that alone was... I had a fucking panic attack playing that goddamn level, and I don't understand how people are like, this isn't a horror game.
Yeah, that anxiety was insane.
Yeah, horror is allowed to focus on the dramatic elements, too, you know?
Yeah, and even the dramatic elements are harrowing. Like that scene we mentioned earlier when Abby bashes Nora with the fucking lead pipe.
Jesus. Like, there were so many points in this game where it was like, I just don't want to do this. Let's just do something else now.
The whole thing too is like you see Ellie's face like get more composed, like she's getting ready to do it, and then the game's like press square.
Yeah.
And then when like Ellie gets back to like her home base, she's like all fucked up.
Yeah. Oh, this game was just so brutal.
All she says is just, I made her talk. And
even before then, she like takes out her map and her handshake, and she's at this aquarium. That's all she says.
She's like trying to be business and casual about it. Like, I know where she's at now. She's here, but like her body is just betraying what's going on inside. And
I don't know the last time I've ever been so emotionally invested in a video game. It's such an impactful masterwork. It's amazing what they've done with these two games. Just hats off. I say whenever the award season comes up for the video game awards, this game gets them all.
Yeah. If they make a third game, I'd be very interested to see what they do next.
I am of such a mixed mind. No, I hope they don't. I don't think they should. I hope they don't. If they do, I think it's probably time to bring in new characters and do something different. And that's just because I don't know that I can fucking take any more. I don't want to lose Ellie. I don't want to lose Dina. I
want to see Abby and Lev. Give me Abby and Lev, and I'll be happy with that.
Well, but even then, goddamn well, something bad's going to happen to one of them, and you're just going to be completely fucked up again. Yeah,
I could see there is that little seed planted for Lev talking about going across the ocean, so we could get like a adult Lev adventuring like Hawaii, and then I don't know, like Eastern Asia or something.
Yeah. It's like Lev in Italy. Let's do that. Yeah. Let's go see
Giuseppe Stromboli and Lev.
Yeah,
going on an adventure together.
The Colosseum full of infected.
Yeah, Giuseppe Stromboli and the briefcase of meatballs.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this, Dan.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. This was a blast.
Appreciate it. Yeah, this was good. This game. Just talking about it, I'm not ready. I'm still.
It's the feels are still there, man.
I tried. It was hard because, I beat it in 3.5 days maybe, and all I wanted to do was still be playing the game, but starting over was like I wasn't ready emotionally to go back to the beginning of that journey again at the same time.
Yeah,
same here, man.
Like the gameplay was so fun and satisfying. Like I want more of that, but this other stuff, I can't look at Joel again right now. Like
I will say before we end everything, there's a YouTube channel that Dan and I have been sharing that's like Last of Us Pro expert level. Like this person's insane. But I was playing earlier today, and I'm at the mall, like the shopping mall. It's flooded, and I'm being hunted by the wolves. I duck in the water, swim around, pop out, shoot one of them in the back of the head, dive back to the water, swim back around, get the next one the same way. And I just felt so accomplished getting those 2 headshots.
It's such a satisfying thing. He actually, I think just today uploaded the Santa Barbara portion of the game, playing on the hardest difficulty, playing aggressively. You know, right at the beginning, when you're on the train tracks, when you really first encounter the guys there.
Yep.
He starts that sequence by shooting an explosive arrow directly into the sky. Then he throws a stun grenade at the 3 that are standing there, stunning them, and then the arrow comes down out of the sky like 3 seconds later and blows them all.
What the fuck?
And it's unreal. Like
what? That's amazing.
It's out of control. I mean,
The pro gamer moment.
Watch some of these videos. It's SMVR. Like the Hillcrest video is out of control. Like he's on a different level. Like he's just on an utterly different level.
Sounds like it. I mean, I was at the level with this game where I got to the Seraphites at the end, and the next morning I'm outdoors with my kids trying to get them to play, and one of our neighbors was whistling for his kids.
Oh, no.
Fuck, I got to get my crossbow. Like, I got to find some tall grass to hunker down into. What is happening? It's like, oh, shit, that's right. It's just the neighbor. I was way too invested in this game.
And one thing I'm just going to add is originally Seattle was 5 days. And there was a whole arc where Ellie went to the Seraphite Island and learned about the Seraphites. There was a whole like circle of hell thing. And they cut that off from the game.
Wow.
So this game was originally much longer than what we got.
I mean, this is a long game, and it wears you down on so many levels. It's just...
It works so well for the message that it's telling, too. I see a lot of people talk about, like, how there's kind of, like, a dissonance between the amount of people you kill in the gameplay and, like, the fact that you don't kill Abby at the end. But if people don't understand the distinction between killing, like, crazy slave owners and, like, killing a woman who's just trying to save a young child, then they're fools. And also, it's attrition and exhaustion. It's like the amount of blood you waded through to get to this moment. You're like, no more. Just like sooner or later, it just has to be enough. And
agreed.
So it works on so many levels, I feel like.
Well, all I know is this is a marvelous game, and I am very much afraid if they do a part 3.
Yes.
And I got to the end of this, and that, hey, start your new game plus. I'm like, nope, fuck no. I got to go grieve for a little while. I am in mourning.
I got to go find a sunset.
I'm still not ready to go back to it. I got to go play my shiny, happy Fallout instead.
Well, speaking of shiny, happy, Dan, do you have any books coming up that you want to promote for the audience?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, absolutely. So I'm working on the Nightmareland Chronicles right now. I have been for the last couple years and will be for probably like the foreseeable future of my life, or, you know, just in general. It's going to be a project that takes me a long time. I'm not a particularly fast writer. So Nightfall, the first volume, is out now. Lullaby, the second, will be coming out on August 4th. And then successive releases up until volume 6 should be coming out every 2 months. But it's a long journey. Honestly, a lot of inspiration was taken from The Last of Us for it, if I'm being honest.
What are the books about? Just so our audience gets a little bit about it.
It's an adventure horror serialized epic about one man trying to find his long estranged daughter in a world claimed by eternal night.
Nice.
That'd be like the elevator pitch, I guess.
Awesome. I will say, though, the covers of these books are gorgeous.
Daniele Sarah is...
So.
Oh, yeah.
He's. I mean, I'm just so lucky to be working with him. He's amazing. So kind. He's such a kind person, too.
That's awesome.
And thank you for reading. I know you read the first one, Scott, and thank you. And I hope you guys have fun with them.
I have the second one. I'm going to start soon. So see where that goes.
I'll be excited to
But the first one's really good.
Cheers. Thank you.
You're welcome. And where can our listeners get in touch with you at?
Twitter is probably my most active place. My email is floating around at the end of any of my books, pretty much, and on my Amazon page or Facebook or any of that stuff. I don't have a website, unfortunately, because I did for a while, but I wasn't good at maintaining it, so I kind of had to let it go.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Mike, where can listeners get in touch with you at?
Well, do we want to direct the trolls to harass our Twitter account directly, or are we going to do this individually?
You can harass us with at Into Staring. We'll be sure to respond with plenty of Samuel L. Jackson staring gifs.
Yeah.
Because you could take your hate and shove it up your fucking ass.
Yeah. I'll reply to all of them.
That's nice of you, Matt.
Yeah. I have my filters that if I don't follow you, I don't hear from you. So if you want to troll me, you can talk into the void at Mike H 5856. And if you hated this game and are sending death threats to any of the people involved and want to add us to your list, go fuck yourself.
And Matt, where can listeners get in touch with you?
I'm on Twitter at BrandenburgDM.
And Matt didn't take much part in this conversation because he hasn't played the game, so don't bother him. Leave him alone, troll.
I would be the perfect. Just give it to me. Just pile it on. You know what? I really don't care.
You can talk to them about shit.
Yeah,
like literal.
Yeah.
All sorts of fun conversations to
You can talk to them about Death Stranding and all the pissing and shitting in that game.
Yeah, exactly.
Matt loves excrement and bodily fluids, and if anyone wants to troll him, he will be happy to talk to you all day long until you block him.
Why are you spreading this rumor? It's terrible.
Episode 10 says you're wrong.
And you can follow me at Rudy53088.
I guess I should probably say I think my handle is at DBH Fiction.
Perfect.
That's helpful.
And this is Scott Kemper saying keep staring.
How do people who make stuff up for a living make stuff up?
New York Times bestseller Jonathan Mayberry told us.
Oprah's book club favorite Sue Miller told us.
You sort of take a character and make some bad things happen.
How'd we get them to do that?
We colored them, just like at a cocktail party, except through your headphones.
Join us every Thursday for the Liars Club Oddcast.
A slightly unhinged podcast where storytellers interview other storytellers.
Available on Project Entertainment Network, iTunes, and everywhere podcasts are heard.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.